Hi, my name is Yalley. In this presentation, I'll be talking about overview of instructional design. This is ELRC 7503 Model 1. So what can you expect from this presentation? I'll be talking about what instructional design is about, and then I'll talk about what are the widely used instructional design models. Then finally, I'll talk about one specific instructional design and its application in a real world situation. So, what is instructional design? When I think about instructional design, I think about it like trying to make one specific color from three different colors of paint, and that one specific color is instructional design. And the three different colors are education, communication, and psychology. So basically, instructional design combines ideas from education, communication, and psychology in order to create and deliver educational and training materials to learners from all walks of life. So it was during World War II when hundreds of thousands of soldiers needed to be trained on a specific task in a short time so they can carry those specific tasks out. So designers or instructional designers had to divide these complex tasks into specific chunks that these soldiers could better understand and comprehend so they can carry out those processes. And that comes with a lot of skill that is needed, and that is how instructional design was birthed. So basically we can say that instructional design is the art of creating instructional materials. However, the field just goes beyond just teaching materials, but also um, it explores how students learn and what kind of materials and methods will mostly be effective in enhancing learning and ensuring that desired competencies are developed in learners. So with that in mind, what are the widely used instructional design models? Well, one cannot talk about widely used instructional design models without considering the psychology behind all these models. So in this slide, I'm going to share with you three foundational psychological learning theories that underpins most instructional designs. The first one is the behaviorist that centers on response to stimuli. This approach is usually used in training animals like dogs. If you want them to perform specific tasks, what we usually do is to reward them whenever they perform that specific task. And that kind of response and reward creates in them a certain learning so that every time they need to perform that specific task, the reward is like a stimulus for them to carry out that specific task. In the same way, the cognitivist approach um, also acknowledge knowledge acquisition through internal processing of information, and this involves receiving information, organizing it, storing it, and then retrieving it in the mind. So this approach is mostly internal, unlike the behaviorist that involves a response to stimuli. However, there's some sort of relationship between the behaviorist and the cognitivist approach to learning. Um, the third one is the constructivist theory. This is where the learner's interaction with his environment creates in them a learning experience. So, whilst the behaviorist and the cognitivist approach do not pay much attention to the learner's environment, the constructivist approach pay attention to the environment. So, in this table, I have three instructional design models, the key features, and the psychological underpinning, which I discussed in the previous slide. So the first one is the ADDIE model. ADDIE stands for analysis, design, development, and implementation. So the ADDIE model is um, based on the behaviorist theory, and the main criticism of that model is it's been too rigid and inflexible for today's digital age. However, it is a robust and logical approach for designing instruction. The second one that I want to talk about is the Dick and Curry model. So this model is also based on the behaviorist approach to learning. Critics attack this model for it being too flexible, um, to begin at any stage. However, this model consists of 10 connected and inter-influencing steps that instructional designers can follow to create effective instructions. The next model is Robert Guyen's 9 events of instruction. This instruction somehow, um, it's both behaviorist and cognitive in its psychological approach to learning. Critics usually believe that the model does not stimulate learners to explore problem solving. However, it is a model that is also highly used among instructional designers, and it consists of 9 events of learning. The next is the Merrill's first principles of instruction. That model is constructivist in its approach. Critics believe the model's emphasis on active engagement may not be suitable for learners who are passive in the learning in their learning experience. However, it also have some problem solving and task centered aspects that helps in, for instance, training organizational staffs and big company training models. The next one is the rapid e-learning design. This model is hinged on just-in-time approach to design. As the name suggests, the critics usually are of the view that it lacks sound instructional design methodology. And the psychological underpinning of this model is cognitive in nature. The final one is the problem based learning. This is also constructivist in nature, and critics say that the approach demands too much from novice learners. As the name suggests, problem solving involves in learners solving real world, non routine classroom problems and developing critical thinking competencies. So, for my real world application, I chose the ADDIE model as discussed before the slide. The ADDIE model stands for analysis, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. So in this design, I used it to develop a user guide for students and faculty who struggled to use the Zoom application. So in the analysis stage, I identified the learner's need, prior knowledge, and why they need a Zoom app. And for the design stage, I use their previous learnings and experiences to design the user guide. So for the development stage, I used elements like screenshot, arrows, and also steps to develop the guide. For the implementation stage, I sent out the file through emails, but the file was saved in different formats in JPEG, PDF, GIF, and other formats, even as a Google Drive document. So it can be accessible to anyone who has the link and also downloadable. But before that, I had to roll out a pilot user guide to get feedback before I engage in the full implementation. And then finally, um, I used the number of views and the number of downloads as well as surveys to get feedback from the users in order to evaluate the user guide I developed. So the steps are have been shown here in short. For first, users have to download the Zoom app, and then secondly, they have to click on join meeting button to join an ongoing meeting, and then thirdly, they had to sign up. So, um, and then finally, they have to sign in. So this is just a brief description of how I use the ADDI model. These are my references. Thank you for watching, and I'm waiting for your feedback. Bye bye.